Welcome to Earth, a love story. I'm your host, Robin Lassiter. On this very special episode of the podcast, I welcome my own precious teacher, Kimberly Teresa Lafferty. Kimberly is a seasoned teacher practitioner specializing in constructive developmental psychology and Indo-Tibetan Vajrayana. She leads multi-year private spiritual education cohorts with the Confluence Experience and co-leads with Terry O'Fallon the penultimate Mind's Eye year-long developmental course of Stages International. Kimberly is an active board member for the Association for Spiritual Integrity. She is a wife and a mother. On March 9th through the 14th, she is co-leading The Gathering with Terry O'Fallon and Kim Barta in Maui. Please check out the show notes for information on how to join that gathering and work directly with these skilled teachers and practitioners. In our conversation, Kimberly and I talk about how phenomenal experience can lead us to a spiritual and developmental path. We talk about touching the moon and why we should try, how wisdom and love literally change the world, and so much more. And stay tuned after the end of our conversation for an old school spoken word heart calling to those I am feeling with me at the midnight, mid-morning witching hour. Come for the raw cry, stay for the mountain lions. You'll see. And before we get into this conversation, a reminder that the first course of the Mystery School for the Brokenhearted opens on February 26th. Wayfinding the Sacred Interior is a 6-session course over 3 weeks where we dive into deep frameworks around the sacred interior landscape, how and why to navigate it, how to connect with unseen support, and what it's like to open windows of perception into unexplored realms and dimensions. You can sign up for that course at robinlassiter.com or check the show notes. And now, please enjoy my conversation with Kimberly Lafferty. We share a history of anomalous experience, phenomenal experience, extraordinary experience, and what would be called in your work a state experience, and how those experiences can lead to spiritual and personal development and be a doorway for that. And it was certainly that way with me. I was lucky enough to find at the right time Stuart Davis, who talked about phenomenal experience as a developmental driver and a spiritual driver, and first heard you on his podcast and had my own beautiful state experience during that conversation. So that's what I want to ask you about. How has that been for you? How did your own state experience lead you into your own spiritual and personal development?
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks, Robin. Great to see you and be here. And that's a big topic that we could sort of break down into parts, I think, and talk about as we go through. I also want to send out a warm hello to all the listeners who are listening now. And even in this moment, feeling everybody coming in, whether you're listening to this in the future, which you probably will be, coming in and joining us in this circle. Yeah, well, it's interesting. Where do we begin? I think the combination of bringing together extraordinary experiences as a developmental driver. And when we say developmental driver, we mean the understanding that our human consciousness on the relative side of reality goes through evolution. And we can feel into this, even recognizing, listeners, that on the relative side, which is like the interdependent side, we change. Our mind, our cognition, our feelings, our thoughts evolve from babyhood through growing up, through our teen years, into young adulthood and beyond. And this growing up process is, something that's well established. And we call it development. In the field of studying this, we call it human development. And I studied my psychology training. I went back to grad school after spending decades in as a Dharma teacher and student of Buddhist Dharma, which is going to come up a lot. And I went back to grad school and to getting advanced degrees in this field. After having a series of extraordinary experiences myself and being a, let's call it a spiritual teacher for the lack of a better word, which is who hears the extraordinary experiences or anomalous experiences. And I'm using those things as synonyms right now. So who do you tell? You have something, you see something, or you experience something out of the ordinary that is beyond, that is paranormal, that is trans-normative. Who do you tell? Right? Who do you tell? And often you tell your spiritual teacher, your minister, your priest, or maybe your yoga teacher. I don't know. So I'm also the holder of so many anomalous, extraordinary experiences beings have had. And I started to see that what we call state experiences, which we refer to, which isn't exactly a synonym for anomalous or extraordinary experiences. The way we define state experiences is by contrasting it with stage experiences. And you can say, state experiences are temporal. They come in and they go out. They begin and they end. We all know this, listener, right? Like something happened and it's like the veils parted, or you were left your body, but then you came back. There's lots of different, it's a non-ordinary state that has a beginning and an end. Could be anomalous or not, right? Could be something we define as anomalous or not. But we began to see that the intersection of extraordinary experiences, say state experiences, and stage growth often happened, not always happened, but often happened as almost like a view from the future. In developmental theory, people would debate this, but often these state experiences are glimpses of what you're becoming. They're actually our leading edge of where our consciousness is moving into, where maybe our humanity is moving into, right? So there's a sense of capacity as well in these experiences, where maybe we suddenly have the eyes to see something we couldn't see before, or the ears to hear something, or some precognition, which is just a fancy way of saying seeing the future, right? So it's we don't want to generalize too much, but there was obviously a correlation. It doesn't mean everybody who has an extraordinary or anomalous experience, or even a state experience, it doesn't mean they necessarily grow. So one phrase you'll hear a lot in my field in academia, by the way, I'm not an academic, by the way, I just studied it and I'm in the research side, but I don't belong to an institution out there by choice. But we find these experiences are necessary but not sufficient for developmental growth. So it doesn't mean you're necessarily growing. There are other things that need to happen for it to be really a developmental driver. So yeah, lots more to say, but I'll pause there for reflections.
Yeah, thank you so much. The framing is so helpful and was so helpful to me at a time when, having an experience like this or a lifetime of experiences and compartmentalizing them out of necessity, and then coming into a space where they are here, I can't look away anymore, and needed framework and needed help with that transition, crossing over into something new. And what the, I mean, yeah, I've been talking lately about what is an experiencer, and yes, anomalous experience, yes, extraordinary experience, and also I think anyone who has experienced ontological shock, which could be in any realm of reality. We can have an illness, or there can be a death, or there can be some shock that comes in and changes the way that we think of reality. And so even those experiences I've seen can be entry points into just the deeper questions, the questions that so many of us have, but kind of keep in the background because there's not a lot of space for them in our overculture. And so at some point, the very questions of like, what is life? What is reality? Why are we here? What are we doing here? Get closer and closer to the surface through these ontological shocks
Hmm.
and these moments that break open reality. And so it was really helpful for me to have the framing of that. And my experience also has been that, and what you talked about a little bit has been when something like that happens, the window of perception sort of grows and we get a broader view of what was always there. And then it gets very tricky and slippery uh, about the very nature of reality itself. And
Mm.
that's what so many people who end up in my groups or who I work with are asking that question.
Yeah.
And these experiences are such a perfect entry to that question that gets really, really slippery. What is reality? Is there a mirror aspect to reality? What's real? What's true? And then a necessary seeming like deconditioning of like preference of reality, meaning the waking consciousness is reality in some way, and sleeping is reality in some way, and these other states of consciousness all have a reality to them. And yet, when we engage with it that way, waking consciousness, which we like prefer as the real reality, starts to get very dreamlike, and it can become a very slippery place in a hall of mirrors. And that's often when people start to come together to ask these questions. And again, I just got really lucky that I landed in a place that could answer some of these questions or give us some framework. So,
Yeah, because not everybody does, right? I so concur. There is a naturalness I've discovered and found to these extraordinary or anomalous experiences, to the ontological shock. And listeners, I'm assuming, go ahead and Google it if you want. If you don't know what that means, if you're a listener here in this podcast, then you'll know ontological shock is when the system literally, it's almost like the constructs of what we thought reality were drop, and ontological just means like your belief system gets shattered. Like what you thought was real isn't real, and it's unmistakable. You can't look away. It's unmistakable. And so it was interesting in the research that I did. This was one of my dissertation topics on, which I didn't publish, by the way, so don't go looking for it, on the intersection of development and extraordinary experiences. I, since we love categories, Robin and I love categories, I categorized a variety of different types of anomalous or extraordinary experiences that virtually every single person I've ever had a chance to talk to, and I did it in the actual research for those who signed up, but also when I have these conversations with people, there wasn't virtually, with one or two who just refused to share it, there wasn't anybody I found who didn't have one of these. And they might have had to stop and think, or they might have at first said, "Oh no, I've never had an extraordinary experience." And then they come and found me the next day. I remembered I had this happen. And so I also want to, in this beautiful conversation, assert that extraordinary experiences are actually ordinary. That we have them, but maybe we forget them. And it is a natural part of our human inheritance and our human history. I'm in a house right now. I have all these old books behind me. It's really cool. I wish you could see it, listeners. But I could look at these books. And right now, the book I pulled out is the Book of Kells, just randomly. You look through our literature, you look through our art, you look through our science, even. You look through any human domain and of the humanities, and we find these experiences and these ontological shocks that happen in our own waking up and growing up process. So I found the most common anomalous experiences that we've reported are in no particular order, but unidentified craft in the sky, including a variety of categories, light orbs, maybe machine or metal looking craft or other looking extraordinary craft that put people into an ontological shock, maybe an interaction with that. Second category is some sort of non-human intelligence encounters. I mean, is that what is it, NHE these days? What are we calling it now? Not NHIs anymore? into
I'm
the
not up on the lingo. I still use NHI and UFO
okay.
and all the old things. So yeah.
Something that does not seem to be a human encounter of some sort. Now, our religions, our spiritualities are littered with this. My own tradition, which I'll get to my story of why I went spiritual after my own extraordinary experience, but is founded with some non-human encounter. Look at Jesus. I mean, it's so obvious I don't need to point it out, right? And Mary, but angels, and there are different types of intelligences or beings or entities that people experience. Maybe it's dimensional. It seems like an interdimensional relationship. Maybe it's celestial. Maybe it's galactic. Maybe it's part of Gaia or the Earth, sort of Fae. Maybe it's people identify as angels. We have different words we use when we come out of these experiences. And listeners, you know what I mean. The mind kind of searches for frames. Like, what was that? How do I explain it? What words do I use? And the words themselves just barely pointed out, right? The next category, pretty common, are some sort of ghost encounters or ancestral encounters. Very often happens around death. So grandma dies. You sit up in the middle of the night, you know the moment it happened. Something like that is more common than we know. Something around death and loved ones or generations or best friends, people that you're connected to. The next category we found was near-death experiences or out-of-body experiences. Those are two different things, but they often have some similarities where, something ontological shock happens. We almost die, or we leave our body and come back. And what the heck was that? And these questions you're talking about. Who am I? What is reality? What's happening? These are the wonderful questions that we ask and we should ask. Next category is sort of the general category of dreaming. And what makes dreaming extraordinary or anomalous or non-ordinary, and again, I'm saying it is ordinary, let's put it that way, is the lucidity that happens in dreams. And very often, one of the most regular anomalous experiences that tends to come up, and at least my data sets that I see in my world as I'm seeing it, is precognitive dreaming. People dream of the future. And it very often, this is where Eric Wargo has talked about this and done work on this. Very often, it's interesting. It's relates to time, like you dream of something, and then 1 year later, exactly, or 2 years later, exactly, it happened. There's some sort of time loop. There's some sort of time with precognitive dreaming that seems to be some sort of interesting mystery there. And then the last category is, I just call it anomalous time and space experiences, where time and space gets bent. Bent is my word, but in some way where you're driving from point A to point B. It should take 6 hours in the car. You're in a car with a bunch of witnesses. It takes 90 minutes. It's impossible. And you arrive and, something happens with time and space, that there's a shift, and that gets reported as well. So any of these things, right, would pull the rug out of our consensus of reality, of the way that we think reality is happening. And yeah, I'll pause there for reflections, and we can go into some other places too. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'm feeling the audience resonating so much with all of that, and I'm feeling my own appreciation and resonance, even though I've been across this threshold and in this world for a while now. It's still so nice to hear the validation. This stuff happens. It's real.
Yes.
It there's a way that in this I've found, even in myself, that I can kind of back away from it and fall into the frameworks too much.
Mhm.
And just the naming of all of those things brought, that sense of personal experience, which is, the phrase I use is like, pointing at the moon is not the moon. We can have all of these beautiful frameworks and they're so helpful. And also the direct experience is something beyond words, beyond concept. And the experience of the losing ground and losing footing afterward is beyond concept and beyond words. And that aliveness of experience is what continues to call me back when my mind can get a little beautiful mind and like put things together and see all the patterns and frameworks. And then that direct experience calls me back to life in this moment and the extraordinariness of just that. So thank you for naming
Hmm.
all of those things. And on that note, I wonder, moving maybe from the frameworks into the personal and to the experiential,
Hmm.
anything that you would like to share about
Yeah,
your own experience, it would be
sure,
gratefully
sure,
received in this space. Yeah.
sure, sure, sure. Yeah. Well, yeah, the map is not the terrain. I probably the biggest ontological shock, and we're just having, tea together in the yurt, right? So this is where I'm just Robin and I having a conversation. My probably the biggest ontological shock in the way that we've been talking about, it, and actually how natural it is, and how it lines up with my own growing up process. My waking up, probably, the most shocking waking up experience I had, or ontological experience I had, definitely a state experience I had that pushed me into another state, was very natural. I see when I look at development. I was um, kind of coming out of what we call achiever mindset, which is I was in my late 20s and had done all of the things you're supposed to do as a human woman of my age and time and education, and had a successful corporate career, had to pay my student loans back. I had grown up considering myself quite spiritual, grown up in Catholic schools, um, which I leveraged for some spirituality, but my spirituality experiences were very private and very personal. And I was deeply resourced, and I'm deeply resourced in that way through some early trauma as well. The good thing about some early trauma is you can really leverage it to find resources in other ways. So I'm grateful for that, for finding what I needed inside. But I was living in a fancy apartment in a fancy East Coast city with a fancy boyfriend I didn't even like. And I was miserable. I was really miserable. And I had all this stuff and I had all the money and I didn't even really try for it. It was just sort of going along, doing a job so I could pay my student loans and kind of living to play a little bit. And I was just depressed. And I had on the developmental side, on the growing up side, what was going on, and this will get a little nerdy, but some of you, the listeners, will appreciate it. I'd really this is the stage when the mind, it's actually a part of the mind is growing. And we don't get it till our late 20s usually. Okay. And this is what was happening for me. But my mind was growing to the point where I had what we call metacognition. Now, meta is not, we're not talking meta awareness. That's something else. But metacognition is just this thing where we can, it's what cognitive behavioral therapy is based on. It's what we can think about our thinking about our behavior, think about our feeling, and somehow this all comes together. It's the birth of a sort of what we call awareness, where we can look at ourselves. And are we willing? Do you remember this, people? The moment in your life, maybe in your 20s, maybe your 30s, maybe earlier, where you really just had to look at yourself and you couldn't look away and see, wow, these choices and this behavior and this action, this isn't working for me anymore. And this is a good thing. It's a natural thing. If things are going right for us, this happens. Okay. And I had lost my inner, all I remember saying at the time is I kept writing in my journal, I've lost my inner compass. I've lost my inner compass. And I was relating that to that deep well of spirituality that I had. That's the word for it, right? But this deep well of being connected to something beyond this body, beyond this time, beyond space that I'd had my whole life. And I'd somehow felt like I'd lost it. Now, of course, you can't lose it, right? But I felt like I did. I was depressed. And I did what I only can, the only thing that works for me when I'm really low is I put on some music, Annie DeFranco, and I started to dance and sweat my prayers. We love Annie DeFranco. It was, yeah, I'll have to look up what song it was. And I had an experience. And um, it related to surrendering to the breath, letting the breath breathe me. It related to really being, there was like such a feeling of help me. And I didn't know who I was asking, but I obviously did not know. It was like an emptying out, although I wouldn't have used those words, and a surrender. And I found myself moving into different asana poses. Asana just means pose, or it actually means seat, but it means different yoga poses, what we think of as yoga poses. I'd gone to one yoga class in my life, but I was naturally dropping into them. And through movement, through and I'm sharing this because it related to what I got into later and what the studies I did later on all of these topics. I found myself in forward fold, Paschimottanasana, my face pressed into my thighs very comfortably as it was the most comfortable down bed. My breath was undulating, and there was a moment of just release. And I had I did leave my body. I could get into a lot more detail, but I did make a choice knowing I was safe to leave the body in this particular experience and then come back down into the body. There's a feeling of descending at the end of the experience. Fortunately, I took notes, when I came back down. I don't know how long I was gone. There was deep breath in, deep breath out. Left had a unification, non-dual, use words to describe that which cannot be described. It was a clear light experience, awareness meeting awareness, water poured into water. I came out and described it as if I was all things and all times and all places, like a cosmic orgasm. It was extremely blissful. First sensation you have is coming down, and then you don't know how long time has passed. I have no idea how long time has passed because you're not in time. And there's later, of course, I found so many explanations in the text, in the Indo-Tibetan Buddhist texts and the yoga texts of meaning making around what happened there, and affirmation of this. Obviously, I'm not the only person who's had this experience, clearly, right? So a lot of other people have had experiences like this, of course. So come back down. Third eye was on fire, came out, and I had some cities for a while. I had some powers for a day. Series of realizations came from there, series of precognitive insights. You will spend the rest of your life helping people experience this through yoga and Buddhism, even though I'd never studied yoga and Buddhism. Bringing those two together seemed new back then. This was 99, right? 98 maybe. And one of the insights that came, one of the popcorn insights, precognitive insights was, yes, you will go study Tibetan Buddhism now. That's where the conversation is happening, that not only can help you integrate this experience I just had, although integrate wasn't the word I used back then. We didn't even use that word, right? Yeah, help figure out, right, what happened, because I knew I wasn't special. Like, clearly knew I was not special, right? I was just like everybody else, and I was not the only one who had this experience. And yet, who was having this conversation? Who could I tell about this extraordinary? I left my body, I could read minds for a day. Who am I going to tell without sounding crazy? And that's when the Dalai Lama's book, The Art of Happiness, was a bestseller at the time. And I went and quit my job, moved back to the West Coast, ended the relationship with a guy I didn't even like, and got on the path. I had visited the moon, but I needed to know how to get back there, right? And I wanted company. I wanted company, and I knew that this was what I wanted to dedicate myself to, is making sense of what happened and then being different. Thinking, feeling, behaving in a new way that had meaning for me, not being a young, now young, but a corporate businesswoman who hated it, you know? So, yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It's really generous, and you named right at the end a couple of things that I felt during one of my own experiences, again, with your story. If anyone wants to hear your entire story, you can go listen to Stuart Davis's podcast, Aliens and Artists. There's
Yeah.
3 episodes. You go into it in depth. It's beautiful. And
Yeah.
even as you were recounting it just now, I was recalling exactly where I was driving, as I'm hearing this experience and feeling this deep resonance. One of the things that you said in that podcast, early on, was you talked about how when you first heard, I can't remember what context it was, but someone say suffering exists,
Hmm.
as is said in Indo-Tibetan Buddhism, and that admission, and how there was a relief in that just somebody said it. That was a moment for me that felt like, I don't know what Indo-Tibetan Buddhism is, but it feels like my spiritual home. Plus, all of my experiences get to be here too. I don't have to hide them or, you know, pretend they didn't happen or not engage with that. It was this beautiful. And so, um, at the end of what you shared, you'd seen the moon, and
Hmm.
then you needed like context and kind of help getting back there,
Hmm.
and finding that in your lineage and my lineage, and also, uh, every mystical tradition basically on the planet does have ways to go, to that includes this, because this is natural and human and actually
Yes.
who we are. And
Yes.
so that's how, for me, these experiences brought me to a spiritual path. And then the other thing that you said at the end was like, I wanted company.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that you could tell me, I don't know, but it seems to be sort of through the developmental path, there comes a time when that being in relationship in a as safe a group as we can make it, um, and being in that reflective space and journeying together is part of the developmental path or the spiritual path. And I was absolutely terrified of that and deeply wanted it.
As you should be.
I was like,
Yes.
don't nobody look at me, but can I hang out with all of you while we talk about
Yes.
this stuff?
I know. And now look at us all.
Yeah.
I know. It's the sweetest thing. Oh, yeah. That's so rich. That's so rich. Yeah. I want a company. Well, for me, the message of Indo-Tibetan Buddhism in particular was surprising. And it was so out of left field that I knew I could trust it. I mean, that is one thing Saint Teresa of Avila said, people. Okay, write this down. Everybody go get pause, press pause. Go get a pen and pencil. It's this thing we used to have called paper also. Go get it and write this down. Because Saint Teresa said of Avila, said, when she was questioned by her Inquisition people, they'd send all these people after her to question her on her own extraordinary experiences, her own capacities and powers, like levitating, that she would do. And the people who would come question her they'd always end up being her students, being her devotees. But she said, you can tell an extraordinary experience, you're not crazy. You can tell it's from God and not the devil because it surprises you. It surprises you. It's not, it's something novel, right? It's something new. And so Indo-Tibetan Buddhism, the cue for me to go study it and do it was surprising. And I am forever grateful for it, because in the field of human discipline and human study and human art and human contribution, there might be equals out there, but I don't think you could find a more effective path of wisdom and compassion, of waking up and growing up, of what we call the Dharma, right? And the Dharma is a Sanskrit word. It comes from the root dur, which means to hold. And what we hold to when we're holding to the Dharma is truth, is real reality, of how reality actually works, which is infused naturally with compassion and love. And so if we spend our life devoted to a path that is about cutting through the illusions, getting to how reality really works, or wisdom, to getting to true wisdom, infused with compassion and love, then that is a life well lived. right? And I just couldn't find any, there's nothing else out there that compares to the Dharma. And the first step of the Dharma is, yeah, admitting this fucking sucks. Sorry, listeners, but this sucks. Like the way this was my feeling in that apartment dancing is this sucks. What the heck is going on? I did everything, this all supposed to make me happy. Now, could you say it's my trauma? Sure, whatever. Could you say there's lots of reasonings, but the thing about the Dharma is it actually brings happiness once we admit that there's something wrong in this state of life. Once we admit the way I'm doing this and the way I've been taught it is not correct. There's something off here. Once we take the red pill, once we make those choices to wake up and grow up. And so, and the Dharma, there's this quote I woke up with it this morning. It's from Lojong, and it may sound extreme, but it's true. It's true. It's nothing but the Dharma means anything at all. Throw the rest out like trash. It all ends up to dying. Pack light, wake up, and take off now. You know, and I get chills saying that because of what we're facing in our world, everything that's going on. Nothing but the Dharma means anything at all. It doesn't mean go leave your life. Like I actually didn't need to leave the relationship or leave the job or do all the things to do what I did. It was the right thing to do at the time. But the Dharma gives us the insight and the wisdom to know not only to how to solve the problems of our day, individually in our lives, socially in the world, culturally in the world, not only to know how to solve them, but what problems to solve. Because often we're solving the wrong problems. We're not even getting to the root cause of what's actually going on. Intelligence helps you solve a problem. Wisdom helps you know what problems to solve, and what to do. And so the Dharma gives us that. And this isn't a religion thing. That's not. I don't even, it's this deep well of practice, insight, and guidance for how to see reality for yourself. And then you know what to do. You can be somebody in this world that really makes a difference and an impact. And then secondly, so in Buddhism, there's three jewels. There's the Dharma in no particular order. There's the Dharma as one of them. Second one is the Sangha. Is we do it together. And yeah, it is kind of terrifying, right? To be in community. And yet, when we can hold each other to these deep principles, which I'm involved in a community right now. It's the most mature Tantric Vajrayana, which is just the Diamond Way. That just means esoteric teachings cohort I've ever been with. And it's quite mature developmental center of gravity. And we hold each other to these principles of we're not going to project all over each other. We're also going to be honest with where we're coming from and what's up with us, and somehow manage to hold this beautiful non-dual experience of feelings, thoughts, emotions, traumas. These are all the real material we work with on a day-to-day basis in our relative reality, and yet infused with the wisdom of ultimate reality or emptiness. So we're doing this dance between working with the reality as it is, knowing it's an illusion, and holding wisdom and care and compassion and doing it in this way. So we need others as companions along the way, and it makes things happen much faster and with a lot more joy, honestly, too. Yeah.
Well, if anyone had any question about why you are my teacher, then everything that you just said makes it very, very clear. Yeah, these are the truths that I feel in my bones and know in my bones and have known in my bones and have had um, really nourishing tastes of. And then going through the process of, what I really appreciate about this lineage is the precision of
Mm,
how we can look at the mind and
mm,
and the precision of the ethics and how deeply they studied the interiority and what a guide that is. And
Hmm.
then, as you said, also existing in direct experience. It's like now there's this material that is coming through this lens, this body that I have to work with. It's different than someone else's. And
Yeah.
so how can I take all of that and just do the only thing that I ever wanted to do, which was to be helpful and effective in the world.
Yeah.
Like that's all I ever wanted, you know.
Yeah.
And this gives, all of this gives us a pathway through. And so I want to talk about I've been crying a lot. I've been crying a
Girl,
lot.
bring it. Bring it.
Yeah.
Tears of, as one of my teachers says, tears of God.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
tears of God. It's not normal crying.
I love that you earlier you said also like sweating our prayers. I've
Yeah,
been
girl.
like crying tears of God and like sweating the prayers. It's just
Yeah,
been
girl. Oof.
the only the answer that I have right now to
Hmm.
what's arising in the world. And um I feel deep trust in that and deep wisdom in that. And a lot of it happens in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
So, as we're talking about this, you've said growing up and cleaning up several times. And I
Mhm.
wonder if you will talk about what that means a little bit. I'll say just for people who have listened to my stuff for a while and other people on the podcast, when I talk about going into the underworld, what I mean is shadow work and parts work. It's like
Mhm.
meeting ourselves. Like we go down and meet ourselves, meet the abandoned parts of ourselves, the parts that have been rejected, pushed away, and both the kind of quote unquote dark shadow parts and the golden shadow parts, the things that we have kind of excised from um, our from the lap, from welcome, from bringing in. And so when I talk about going into the underworld, that's what I'm talking about, and that's what I'm talking about I've been talking about the non-rational descent that leads upwards. It's like we go down
Yeah.
to kind of come up, that it's this circle and cycle. Um and so that's what I mean when I talk about kind of cleaning up and growing up. But I wonder if you would talk
Mhm.
about it.
Yeah, sure, sure. Yeah, well, all credit where credit's due. The terms I first, who knows who first started using it, but they really emerged. Waking up, uh, spiritual awakening, growing up, developmental, or cognitive growth or maturity and increase of complexity. Cleaning up, shadow work, which we'll talk about more, definitely, and showing up in community. These first came out of probably the integral scene. And the integral scene was founded by the great, wonderful, extraordinary integral philosopher and theorist Ken Wilber, and all of the many multitude of theorists, teachers, scholars, researchers, practitioners that have emerged in that whole wild, wonderful world. And what the integral, just always standing on the shoulders of our teachers. Ken Wilber's been a very strong influence on me over the years in conjunction with Indo-Tibetan Buddhism. Um, yeah, Ken really was the first to really bring, not the first, but one of the first big ones to bring an increase of complexity and understanding that we need to address if we're going to practice, if we're going to be the humans or beyond humans that we can be, we need to bring all of these things together. For example, not do spirit to do spiritual work without doing the psychological work. Boy, could I tell you stories of that going wrong, right? And which we often see in our spiritual communities out there of, oh, I'll just go meditate on emptiness or go meditate in my cushion instead of having the hard conversation I need to have with my partner. And that becomes what we call spiritual bypassing, right? Where you bypass the necessary psychological work or healing work or relational work that one needs to do just to go chase a state. Any state chasers out there, listeners? Anybody? Anybody? You know, I mean, anyone addicted, let me just go do this substance or go to this next ceremony and no shade. Hey, I'm a state junkie. I confess, my name is Kimberly. I'm a state junkie, but can be a real problem and for our own development. And so recognizing we don't just need to wake up, we need to grow up. We need to do our early childhood. Sorry, but you do, early childhood work, because if you don't address it now, believe me, people, it will come up later, especially if you're working on growing up work, which is where we talk about these stages of human development. And everybody wants to be later and everybody wants to be more mature. But if we don't do the growing up, the cleaning up, which is the shadow work, which are the parts of ourselves, both constructive and destructive, that we've portioned off and said, that's not me. I'm this, I'm not that. Those people out there are bad. I'm good. If we don't do the shadow work, we'll, as we wake up, as we grow up, we'll become narcissistic assholes instead of awakened saints. And so everybody, Robin's got a great community. She's opening up soon, right? I'm accepting applications for my next Vajrayana study group as well and none of that will work. And you should never find, let me put it this way. Please, listeners, no matter who you end up, what community you end up working with, where you go get support, what teachers you want to hang out with, ensure, whoever it is, that they are doing a multiple discipline approach to their own evolution and becoming. In other words, make sure that your teacher, your spiritual teacher, also is doing the psychological work, that there is a place for them to get feedback, that they are reporting to somebody, whether it be a board or somebody else. This is a very important piece of what to look for in a spiritual teacher. Make sure that they're doing their own work, that they're in therapy when they need to be, that they don't need to share their own shadow and use the pulpit, so to speak, for their own healing. That's not necessarily the job, I would say. And there needs to be insurance that that is happening, and a guarantee that that is happening. So psychological work, spiritual work. But what happens when we have psychology without the spirituality? When we have the growing up and even the cleaning up? Okay, so I'm doing my parts work, I'm doing my shadow work, but I haven't tasted that taste of what I actually am and always have been. Right? I haven't seen my own true emptiness. Is people get stuck. They tend to get stuck at what we call fourth person perspective, can't really grow beyond it, and lost forever in parts processing, lost forever in parts parties. And there's usually one particular shadow that will cause destruction. Unless one wakes up to how reality, which is the promise and gift and training of Indo-Tibetan Buddhism, to how reality really works. We call it seeing one's own individual emptiness. When that happens, things heal very quickly. Parts work, shadow work can heal very, very fast and very quickly. And you can't unsee or ignore the ones that really need to get healed because they are loud. So I feel like I'm talking in circles a bit, but that's, we need the waking up, spiritual wisdom and insight. We need the descent into shadow. Absolutely. If that doesn't happen, it's a big problem later. And, we need the growing up. We need to do all of the broadening. It's not just even, growing up isn't just healing the past, as essential as that is. It's making what we do now even better. It's bringing health and breadth to whatever we're dealing with, not just so we don't mess up, but we do things really well. So whatever we're doing just gets more functional and more effective in ways that help the world. And by the way, Robin, you are helping the world so deeply. And I thank you so much for that. You're bringing so much light to everybody through these podcasts and your book and your communities and what you're doing. I see it every day. And I thank you for that. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Kimberly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel it. I can own that in a way that I haven't been able to in the past, which is really great. It's like,
Great.
because of, as you said, standing on the shoulders of teachers, because I've experienced it directly. I know what it's like. And as you were talking about this, about, growing up and waking up and shadow and all of the things that I use we use the myth of the descent of Inanna quite a bit in my work, especially in my women's groups. We're coming to the end of a 9-month cohort right now, which has been absolutely extraordinary. And one of the reasons that we work with this particular story is because she goes on purpose. She goes down to the underworld on purpose. Sometimes we're dragged for sure, and like no shade to being dragged to the underworld, but yeah, by there. um, but she goes down on purpose, and as you were
Love it.
talking about all of these things, it's such a terrifying and courageous act to do that
Yeah.
because we necessarily don't know what we will find there. We cannot see the shadow until we go into it. We don't know what's there. And so
Yeah.
it's this real act of courage to even begin to think about doing that. And for me and for many others, one of the reason that we go is because what you said before, which we can swear on my podcast, like this fucking sucks.
Yeah.
And I don't know what else to do and I don't know where else to go and nothing works. And what is going on,
Hmm.
and getting fed up with thinking that something in consensus reality or the way that we're doing something is going to make us happy forever. This
Hmm.
idea that like we're just gonna be happy somewhere, somehow, if I get all the pieces right and put it all in place, that this world and its trappings will make me happy forever. And coming to a deep painful realization often that that's not the case. And so then
Hmm.
this courageous act, well, I say like I've tried every door and fallen down on every floor. Like there's nowhere else to go. And
Yeah.
so then we go down and the tenderness of that, the vulnerability of that in general, and then the vulnerability of doing it in community where people are going to see, they may see things that in the shadow, we don't want to see about ourselves. And then going through that process and seeing and choosing to be in a space where others can see it as well. You can tell
Hmm.
one of my, deep wounds is a peer wound, right?
Hmm.
So for me, particularly through my lens, that has been a very vulnerable journey. And also, it's like the bottom keeps dropping out. There's no real ground in those wounds either, and it becomes more and more and more liberated and also in many ways more painful, which is really interesting. It's like, yeah, what's happening now and what I mean by the broken heart is a broken open heart. And so much that's happening in our world right now, I'm feeling it more and seeing it more, and it's moving through me, and it is not less painful because I'm turning towards it, and that's what we do in this work too. We turn toward the thing that we don't want to see or that we can't bear to look at and, go directly for it in a way that is not like masochistic, but in a way that is liberating. And so that's what all of this has given me. And yeah. So thanks for teaching and thanks for being a part of it all and being my guide in these spaces in such a
Uh,
beautiful way.
uh. Well, it's a wonderful thing. It's, the third jewel in Indo-Tibetan Buddhism is one I'm always a little shy to talk about, right? But it's the teacher. We call it the Buddha, which is just the archetype, the representation of recognizing that if we want to learn something, that we go to somebody who's learned it really, really well, right? And in our modern day, there's been so much abuse, there's abuse of power that's just rampant out there. It's one of the things we focus on, and I'm so thrilled with the work I do with the Association for Spiritual Integrity because we're looking, as spiritual teachers ourselves, we're looking at how do we not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Recognize there's been so many abuses from leaders and teachers in all domains, right? And that's part of this thing about why suffering sucks. Like samsara, we call it samsara, right? Which is this suffering way of seeing and thinking that we've been taught. It's consensus reality. It sucks. Teachers end up letting us down. Like, what's going on with that? And yet, also, this act of going to somebody and saying, I'm going to sign up for this cohort. I'm going to join this group because I'm willing to be taught is so essential for our own growth. Just the act of one of my teachers would say the ego needs something to bend its knee to. But to be able to, again, do that without, as we see it, say in our community, right, without being silly. Let's not be silly. No teacher is perfect. And yet that doesn't mean they can't teach you. The teacher is holding for us the wisdom channel, right, that has been poured into them and that they have achieved through their own realization, through their own, we call it a dunshi, right? They have an image, they've gone through their own ontological shocks. They've come out the other side and got the gold, right? They went, there's some myth or metaphor I could find, right? They touched the sun, they got the gold, and now they're coming back and holding it and offering it to us. It doesn't mean they're not perfect. And so, it takes a lot of maturity and wisdom, humility and grace, sense of what you can do and achieve while recognizing we can't do it alone, to embark on these sorts of paths. It is not for the faint-hearted, either. Um, and that takes a real maturity to say, I'm willing to be taught something, right? And something to pass on. The other thing I'll say to your listeners is, since we're talking about teachers, is one of the mistakes I see the most often when we're out there and we're deciding, okay, I don't want to do this alone. Churches may or may not suit me. Religions may or not, where do I go? What do I do? Make sure that whatever you sign up for, your own spiritual real estate, your own psychological real estate is precious. It's the most precious thing you have. What you expose your mind to is going to be, in a large part, what you become, right? So choose a belief system, empty as it may be, that's going to function to bring you where you want to go. In other words, choose a teacher that's teaching what you want to learn. And that may sound obvious, but so often we choose a teacher because we like their Instagram page, or they're sexy, or whatever. They're attractive to us in some way, right? There's a vibe we like. We want to see ourselves like them, and that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing as long as it's conscious, as long as we're doing it consciously. But make sure that you find a community, you find a teacher, you find an environment that is actually teaching what you want to learn. So think about it, people. What do you want to learn? One of the shorthands for, I think, environments that we're in often is, it's like saint school. Like, do you want to spend your time not in a higher than that way, but pursuing wisdom, grace, insight, where you can really be of service to the world, right? So go find a school like that. Or do you want to learn to paint? That's a wonderful thing to learn. Go find somebody who's teaching you how to paint. So that's an important part. Find a teacher that's teaching what you want to learn, the third jewel, and ensure that they also are doing the work, that they're accountable to somebody, and that they're open to it. Because in Tantra or in Vajrayana, which is, what I teach, we move very quickly. We move very, very fast. And we're utilizing these elements and powers and insights that are like rocket fuel. And they require, in order to pull it off, they require that there be a ground of realization and ethics. And you can always tell somebody's state of their own realization, of their waking up and growing up, by how they act, by their ethics. So look at behavior also. Don't need to be perfect. We're all human also, right? But look at their behavior, and then that will tell you a lot. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. I am just mindful of the time. I want to ask you about your upcoming group coming together in Maui. I don't know if registration is still open,
Mhm.
but you are co-leading a space to go deeply into these subjects and more.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you want to talk about that a little bit.
I would appreciate that. Yes. We still have some spaces left. I'd love to get people there. So we are for the first time ever, two of my colleagues, Kim Barta, who is arguably one of, certainly one of the great scholars, practitioners, psychotherapists alive right now doing shadow work. Kim Barta has integrated developmental awareness, many, many decades of working with a variety of multi-generational families on reservations, in the halls of academia, for many, many different settings, and really become a master of shadow work. And he's created a framework of integrating and healing shadow that also is applicable for someone who's new to shadow work or someone who's quite savvy with shadow work already, how to heal and integrate, the descent very quickly. So Kim Barta is a shadow master. I'm getting together with him. I'm holding the seat of spiritual or state awakening. We're going to be practicing experiences of accelerating our extraordinary experiences and our state awakening, coming together with Terry O'Fallon, who's really the stages, the growing up side. So it's cleaning up with Kim, waking up with me, growing up with Terry O'Fallon, the leading theorist and researcher right now on developmental theory. And we're bringing all of these three topics together for the first time in a week-long retreat in Maui. This is the 9th through the 14th. We're getting off the mainland because the mainland is way too chaotic and crazy right now. It is still the States, but it's its own unique, Hawaii is its own special place. It's its own unique mana and magic that holds us and hosts us. And we're going to be looking at the phenomena of bypassing these three things in particular. Now, bypassing, I've talked about earlier in this podcast. It's when we overfavor one aspect of our own growth and development at the expense of another, right? So we never do that descent, or we never do the spiritual work and wake up, or we never really do the growing up part. We never really go back to that early childhood and deal with it. We're looking at how we, on a positive way, not by out swimming around and digging in the dark all the time, but how we can flip it and in positive aspects do avoid bypassing, do work in all of these areas. We're going to be on the beach. We're going to be with turtles. It's quite a mature group coming together. And I think it's going to be the birth of something really new, looking at all three of these areas together. So check it out if you'd like to. Anybody listening can go to stagesinternational.com, and it's under The Gathering. So I hope people can join us there.
Yeah, I hope so too. I'll put it in the show notes so that people can find it easily.
Thank you.
Yeah. And is there anything, one of the questions that I was going to ask you is like, what do we do? How can we be most helpful and effective in the world right now?
Right.
And you answered that in the, as you talked about, all of these things that we've been talking about, waking up and having the realization and growing up and cleaning up. If you could, if there's something else in you that you want to talk about that is like, just I'm feeling, and it's arising in my communities and in spaces that I'm in, just this tremendous.
Yeah, tell me, what's it like out there? Yeah.
Yeah.
What's going on with them?
Yeah. I think right now there's a confluence of deep grief and sometimes rage and a sense that there needs to be a third way. And like all of those are meeting, that the deep grief and rage, which can sometimes turn into division, when often turns into division, us versus them, meeting fight with fight and continuing the cycle, the samsaric cycle. And yet they are present. And now it seems like something is coming in where there needs to be a third way. How can we meet this moment and not continue the cycles that have been perpetuated in, and it's really hard. It's hard for me, it's hard for other people too, because in some ways it can feel like turning away or not holding people accountable or, not speaking out against things that are challenging, something like that, that it can be this sort of, that if we look for a third way, it can be sort of like an acceptance of some things that are happening, which it doesn't feel that way to me at all. To me, it feels like my my experience and lots of other people are reporting just this really um, visceral, experiential contact with the heart that seems transformative and transmuting and also is hard to talk about, especially in spaces um, that are very rooted in us and them and meeting fight with fight. And I understand all of that. And also, it seems like this third way is being born. So,
I'm glad to hear it. Yeah. Well, yeah. What do I want to say here? Nothing but the Dharma means anything at all. You know, it, I recognize too, it in this moment, when we're locked into this moment in time, it's like we're kind of locked in a phone booth, one of those old-fashioned phone booths. See, I'm dating myself again. People, there used to be this thing called phones in a phone booth. And you would go in there and you'd need to find this thing that used to be around called change and quarters, and you'd put it in. When we're not awake, since we're using that, I'll just carry on. We're locked in this thing of we think time and space is just now, right? And that whatever our news feed, and I'm not saying it's not real, it's real. Oh, it's real, but not the way we think it's real, right? But we think our news feed or our media, our scrolling or the newspaper and all of this is actual reality that's going on out there in this time and space. And that's all we can see. And so we're constantly responding to things that we think are actually coming out there at us, right? And there are things that are somehow shooting across time and space out there at us. That's a world. And that's not actually what's happening. And when we wake up, we unmistakably see this, no matter what your tradition or what your view. Whether it's estate experiences where you suddenly blast out of that phone booth into all of the universe and you see you're all things at once. When we're waking up, our time frame is much bigger, right? We can zoom out a bit. I invite you all to zoom out a bit and see the arc, even just zoom out and see 100 years. Not being locked into this moment in time, 100 years, the scheme of things, what's going on, right? And maybe there is an intelligence and a grace to even the mess, to one empire falling, another rising, whatever. Empires have fallen and risen. People have been getting hurt before the current administration. Samsara has existed before the current administration. It doesn't mean I agree with any of those choices that are going on, and that I agree with leaders that seem to be coming from in any, a variety of leaders in a variety of domains that seem to be coming from a narcissistic, immature, self-absorbed, selfish place. But that's not new. That's not new. That doesn't necessarily, bring us comfort if we walk down the street and we are afraid, right? For the first time, because of our own privilege, maybe. We didn't have to feel that before. The people are afraid all over the world. So the interesting thing about wakening, you referenced this earlier, Robin, is we see more. We're zoomed out, right? We can see time and space through its arc. We can see the causes of where we've come from to get where we are and what's going to create the future in terms of what's being planted now, both individually and collectively. And it's not necessarily pretty. One of the things Ken Wilber would often say is it hurts more when we see more. But in another way, he says it bothers you less. I don't know if I would put it that way. I think it leaves a misimpression. It's not that it hurts more and bothers you less. It's that you feel more and can also hold it more. Because we're also seeing the light. We're also holding the big picture. We are all players on a stage. This is just a play. Are we going to get that upset about it? And yet, our question to ourselves, whether now or in the future or in the past, no matter what administration is in, power and how we feel about it and suffering is going on in the world that we see, is what we can do is wake up and realize that what we're experiencing is not out there coming at us. It's something that is arising within us. And this gives us an extraordinary sense of agency and power. As a tantrika, and again, listeners, tantra is not what you think when I'm talking about it, okay? It's not that. It's something that is beyond all thoughts to imagine and words to describe. Tibetan Buddhist tantra is something special and unique. We call it Vajrayana. But we're engaging consciously the capacity to develop wisdom so we know how to solve problems and what problems to solve, infused by deep love. Wisdom without love is not real wisdom. It doesn't exist. Love for all people, all parts, all inside and out without exception. We don't just love the people that think like us. Without exception. Love, wisdom, and power. We have the power. You have the power. We have the power to actually toggle the switches of reality into the future. And that's not a metaphor. And the reason we're doing that is developing our wisdom, our love, and our power is so that we can be a being that as we walk through our day, no matter what we're doing, we are walking as a prayer and a shift in humanity, that the matrix that we are engaging in and participating on is having an incredibly positive impact on those that we see and touch. So what can you do? Well, first of all, people, stop spending so much time getting, a feeding tube of unnecessary opinions and news. Find out what you need to find out for your own comfort. Trust your sources. I have people in my life. I know somebody very closely in Homeland Security. I call that person when I want to know what's going on in the inside, right? I know somebody else who does this, is the CEO of this. This is how I deal with it. I'm not putting my head in the sand, but I'm being careful with what media and reality I'm exposing myself to, and I ensure it's trustworthy. So if you are going to expose yourself to that, make sure it's trustworthy. Secondly, a kind word to the grocery store clerk that might have a t-shirt on that is the opposite of your political party is the most important act you can do that day. That makes a difference. So in other words, what you say, what you think, and how you act, how we say, how we think, and how we act as we move through our day is what literally creates tomorrow, and tomorrow, and tomorrow, and tomorrow. So you have all the power. You can go out and you can protest peacefully without breaking the laws. If you can do that in a way that's safe for you and not putting you or your family in jeopardy, great, go do that if that's the best way to do that. And I am also saying that moment with somebody who thinks differently from you, where you look at each other's eyes and you have compassion and you see where you might potentially align of just both wanting to be happy, just both wanting to be happy together. That is maybe even more powerful. So what can you do? Again, how do you walk? How do you talk? How do you act? And how can a kind moment with your neighbor, being open to who needs help and service, being open to who needs a kind word, and also, yes, doing the bloody work, doing everything that Rob and I have been talking about joyfully. It doesn't have to be painful. This can be a blissful path to bliss. Nothing feels better than when a shadow is released. Now, it might not be turning to see the parts of myself that I would rather not see. I have had to pull over to the side of the road and vomit sometimes if I see that. I'm not sugarcoating it. And yet, when that energy is released in my system, in my being, it's extremely blissful and extremely wonderful. So do the work, and The small things really do matter. And our thoughts, I mean, it really is wake up to awareness where you can begin to monitor and experience your thoughts throughout the day, people. They're just clouds. They are just clouds. You are not what you think. You are not, you are something else. You are the sky. And yet, those thoughts, how we think, what we're thinking, literally build our tomorrows. So, work there, I would say. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Hmm.
Yeah. I love we need the fire, the clarity, the truth. We need the truth. And I love that. And I think there's so many, my experiences, there are lots and lots of people who are ready for the wisdom, wisdom to know how to navigate these times. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I hope it's helpful. I hope it's helpful.
Yeah. It
Imagine
is
if,
for me,
yeah, me
even right
too.
now. Yeah, it's just
Yeah,
like, yeah, this is it's this becomes the ground as all
hmm,
these ontological shocks kind of pull the ground away, pull the ground
yeah,
away, pull the ground away.
yeah.
It's, wisdom and compassion, love, um, awareness become the ground. And from
Yes,
there, it's a new ground that's true, and that we can take action from and
that's right.
not, have like a moral injury of doing something that we think is the right thing, but something in us feels that it's not, and trying to figure out what is the way that actually does open the heart in a very courageous warrior saint kind of way. Like it takes a lot to open the heart in that way. So,
It does. And that's how we know we're on track.
mm,
That's how we know we're on track is if we're more closed and more bitter and more angry, how is that helping anybody? Nobody who changed ever by having somebody scream in their face. I don't know. Maybe, but so there is a way forward. And I also think the last thing I'll say too about this is there is such a postmodern tendency to deconstruct, problem, 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 problem. And this is good. This is a good evolutionary impulse that we've had. But I'd also like to see us all start to move towards more of a good old fashioned positive psychology approach, of generating the positive qualities instead of just saying everything that's wrong with everything all the time. Well, then let's be generous. Let's be forgiving. Let's be grateful. These are going to create a different future for us. And so, where can we, if it's not bypassing, right? It's not ignoring, but what beauty can we bring to the world? How can our cup overflow as opposed to constantly being emptied out, right? What are we going to fill it with?
mm,
Right. That's a way to impact change more.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm seeing the cycle of the descent of Inanna. She comes back up
Thank
and she
goodness.
brings her gifts to the world.
That's
And,
right.
yeah, that there is and coming back up can be very tender, and yet in the underworld we've often died and not died. So there's strength and power. We're broken open. Something has left and something new is here. And how can we bring that to the world?
Well, that's part of it too, is when we can zoom out and look at what's going on right now, we have that bigger picture. Exactly like you're talking about, that we do go through individually, collectively, socially, we go through these cycles of death and rebirth. And there is a naturalness to it. So, how can we navigate that with care for ourselves and each other? And those in our world. Remember also, people, we talk about being bodhisattvas, warriors of the heart. It's something, I know, I feel like I can safely speak for you, Robin. Tell me if I'm incorrect, but something that we vowed to lifetimes ago, very likely lifetimes ago, is this commitment to be, a being who can really be a warrior of the heart. And one of the commitments we make as bodhisattvas is we will save all beings who have yet to be saved. We will be there. Well, how are we going to save all beings? What are we going to do with all beings? What does that mean I need to do? All beings are the people in our lives. So start there with your activity, with your action, with your activism. Start there with the people in our lives that we see whether we want to or not, right? That we see all day, your boss or your neighbor, whoever it is. That's where we work. These are the people that we're going to save all beings, just kindness and compassion and generosity and forgiveness. That if we all could do that, then things would change very quickly. Yeah.
And I will report things do change very quickly in our worlds when these things are put into practice.
Yeah.
In that way that you were talking about before, something surprising happens.
Yeah.
That it's surprising that it works.
Yeah.
It's like I keep watching myself have the same argument with my mother, like showing up in a particular way. And when I change, when I work with my own ethics and my own mind and the way that I'm seeing the situation and then, oh my God, there's that projection. Oh, that is me that I'm yelling, that I'm mad
Hang
at.
it.
So see
Yeah.
that projection, it's me. Try a third way, this
Yeah.
third way of radical compassion, of seeing where we're alike rather than different. And then something transforms. I mean, I've seen it, and this is not, again, me, but I've seen literally the land that I'm on change
Yeah.
with these practices.
Yes. That's
And
right.
that's what we can do. And it is love and wisdom. And it's
Yes, ma'am.
extraordinary. So
Yes.
thank you.
Yes. It's actually, you want the place of magical, mystical miracles. Robin and I are being literal here. You can see the land actually change. You can see your mother actually change. I mean, if that's not a miracle of miracles, come on now. Like you can see this is, and it's also why Tantra and Vajrayana and a lot of the things that we both now share with our various communities, it's considered secret because it's very powerful. It's a the ultimate mystical power tool of shifting dimensions and realities, and also doing it with other interdimensional beings, to be frank, doing it with company that is both embodied and perhaps has bodies we can only see at certain times otherwise. And so it's like the ultimate company of literally being a being who can make a radical difference in this world. Indeed, dare I even say, save our world and save ourselves in these worlds for us in the world that we're creating. And that's not really an extreme thing to say. So why not try? Right?
Yeah.
Why not try?
What else are we doing here?
What else are we going to do? Yeah. Let's just, I wish going down to the bar worked.
Right.
I mean, if it worked, I would be down there. But
Tried it.
sadly,
Yeah,
tried it.
No. Yeah, didn't work.
Didn't work, sadly. Yes.
Amazing. I
Yeah.
feel so nourished. I felt several times this like ping of electricity in the community listening, of just
Me too.
recognition and knowing. And because so many people have had these direct experiences that point to this, and giving them a framework and meaning that can
Yeah.
be helpful beyond ourselves and to ourselves. No shade to just me getting liberated. Like, please, if that's it, great.
Yeah.
And then also it spreads and helps the world. So it's really beautiful. I'm so grateful. Thank you so much for being part of this and being in this community space. And feeling it. It feels so good.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Robin. Love it. Thanks for having me.
Thanks again to Kimberly Lafferty for being on the podcast, and check the show notes for her upcoming offering on Maui, The Gathering. And now, apocalypsis, the unveiling, the revealing, and what is being revealed now has lived in my body since my birth. Earlier, even. My mother's eggs were in my grandmother's womb and back, and so what is being revealed now has lived in my lineage since before the beginning. Back before the beginning, the part of our human history we don't remember. We think our history started just a few thousand years ago, and we think that legacy of brutality is who we are. My body has become a raw cry. It was always there, and enough has been liberated through my own care, grief, and power, and now my body is a raw cry. a sick turn of the stomach, an aching back and neck and shoulder, and a sun-blazing heart. Grief and rage rise from the center of each cell in my body. My body is the space which life herself moves through, and life herself is cleansing me of thousands of years of introjected wrong. I pause there as I'm writing to find the right word. The right word is wrong, and I know that because I can feel it. Wrong twisted through my heart and belly in an off-center electric line of pain. I trust my body, and I know the right word is wrong. And this cleansing happens quietly in the midnight, mid-morning witching hour. I am silent, and my body is a raw cry. The earth taught me how to eat the darkness and digest it and metabolize it and transmute it, and I feel a honeycomb lattice of women around the world with me doing the same. Sometimes hot tears come, and I don't clench my throat to try to hold them back. I let them soak my face and pillow. My body doesn't convulse with resistance to the pain. My body is a river, a wide open raw cry. There are no rocks in the stream. I sometimes try to talk about the raw cry to the wrong people. The wrong people, they have the wrong and don't even know it. The wrong takes up so much space inside. They can't hold it with me. When this happens, my spine lengthens. My belly softens and my heart blazes. I know, after all, what it's like to be full of the wrong and not even know it. Compassion comes and breaks my heart again, and I eat their wrong too. The midnight, mid-morning witching hour comes, and I am the space which life herself moves through, and she makes her way to the center of my cells, and the pain is pushing through my bone, marrow, tendons, muscle, skin, womb, belly, throat, heart, eyes. The soles of my feet and the palms of my hands open, and the wrong flows painfully out, and the earth rises to receive and eat the wrong she takes so much for us, and my body is a raw cry. My body is the body of the earth. My body is the body of the world, and as apocalypsis continues to reveal the wrong, I am surprised at what my body holds. My body, which was never the overculture's idea of okay, except when I was 14, I feel my body only in relation to that which defines its value, and I am sick, feeling the deep, deep, deep in my cells commodification of my flesh. I am surprised that after all this time, my body is holding this. I've looked into the dark corners and loved myself back to wholeness, and still this wrongness in me went unnoticed. It isn't in the realm of the mind, it is in the raw cry of my animal body, my female body. I didn't ask for it, I inherited it. She contains multitudes, and they are deep down, quiet, raging, soft, shimmering, rolling beneath the mind, beneath thought, beneath language, before language, instinct, power, truth. In the midnight, mid-morning witching hour, I silently and gratefully endure the cleansing of the wrong from the center of my bones. It is devotional. It is holy. I know that I can't really, truly express it fully with words, and I know every single woman knows fully without words. We are remembering and transmuting, and it is agony, and we endure it gratefully with holy devotion. I am in the valley, in the dome, and there are mountain lions here. They've always been here, but in 50 years we've never seen them. We know they see us. Now suddenly there are lion kills everywhere, 10 within a mile radius, and the dogs barking terror every morning up the north-facing ridge that hugs my dome. I started dreaming of them weeks before I came home. Apocalypsis is a friend revealing them. In my dreams, they slink through belly-deep snow, or I find their covered kills in the forest. I feel their unapologetic power. In the final dream, there are 3, and I see their faces clearly. My body is a raw cry, and beneath the mind, beneath thought, beneath language, before language, I know they have come for me, come for this time, The world is rhyming dream logic, and the mountain lions are wild and dangerous, and they are bringing me their medicine, and in the mid-morning witching hour after the wrong is cleansed, I drink it in, and every woman is drinking with me. If you'd like more information about the Mystery School for the Brokenhearted, the Wayfinding course, or to work one-on-one with me, please visit robinlassiter.com. Thank you.